Chapter 222, Better Late Than Never 2. However, there were 2 points that I still had to explain. You can apply for actual driving training immediately. As long as there is an accident during the training, you will fail the special flying license test. I need you to sign up again, pay a new fee, and start over. Similarly, the extreme test is the same. You only have one chance. If you can't pass, you can only register and pay the fees again. Do you understand? Coach Lin said solemnly. I understand. This is the sensor key for training flying car number 227. I've already turned on the semi-coaching test drive mode for you. You have 20 minutes to familiarize yourself with the specific condition of the vehicle. The high-intensity driving training would begin in 20 minutes. The high-intensity driving training you applied for has a total of 7 rounds, 2 hours per round. After 7 rounds, you could apply for the extreme assessment and obtain a flying license. Of course, you can choose to undergo 45 rounds of normal driving training. Before taking the normal exam to get your driver's license, Coach Lin said, I choose high-intensity training. Zhu Tui left with the key after he finished speaking. He had done this mainly because he wanted to get a special flying license. Under normal circumstances, it would have been a little time-consuming. The training in the simulation pod required 77 days to complete the entire set of training for the actual driving training. The duration of each training session was 2 hours. Even if the coach did not rest and arranged all kinds of exams, 3 months was considered extremely fast. 4 months was considered fast. 5 months was the normal time. Zhu Tui felt that it was a waste of time. After studying the exam rules of the special flying license, he realized that there were still some special rules. After all, in the great genetic age, management was more humane. It was the extreme test that Zhu Tui had applied for just now. If he passed, he would get his driver's license in 7 to 8 days. If he fails, the 120,000 registration fee will be gone. If he wants to take the exam again, he has to pay again. It was convenient, but it came with a price. There were many students who came to the training ground to take the special flying license exam. Most of them were first-year students, and some were second-year students. For first-year students, if their reaction speed was not fast enough, they would first undergo the relatively time-consuming training in the early stages. The last few tests required one to have a reaction speed of 10 milliseconds. They could wait until the next semester. Zhu Tui ran into many familiar faces along the way. They all greeted Zhu Tui, and their greetings were the same. You're here for your driver's license too? Zhu Tui nodded with a smile. His smile was a little awkward. That was because most of the students who greeted him knew Zhu Tui, but Zhu Tui did not know them. This was probably the little problem that Zhu Tui had. Zhu Tui, you're here to get your special flying license too? Not long after, Zhu Tui finally met someone he knew. They were from the same hometown. There were even 2 of them. Tong Qi and Heming Kakshuan were also from Jincheng Prefecture. This was especially so for Tong Qi. Back then, he was considered the most dazzling genius in Jincheng Prefecture. However, after he entered the Wuxia Genetic Evolution College, he gradually became ordinary. This was probably the charm of the Wuxia Genetic Evolution College. A genius from an area could only be considered an ordinary student here. The past results only represented the past. That's right, long time no see. I've been planning to get a special flying license as a backup, Zhu Tui said with a smile. That's right, although we're in the same school, it has indeed been a long time since we last met. However, the last time you fought in the combat arena, it was really enjoyable. Although Tong Qi was a little arrogant, his attitude toward Zhu Tui, who was now a rising star, had undergone a huge change compared to when he was on his way to the academy. His bearing was not bad. Heming Kakshuan, on the other hand, only nodded in greeting when he saw Zhu Tui, even though they were classmates from the same school. It was obvious that Heming Kakshuan was very uncomfortable with Zhu Tui's current rise. After Zhu Tui had made a name for himself, the dirty deeds he had done on the way to school felt like a slap to Heming Kakshuan's face. When did you register? Tong Qi pulled Zhu Tui aside and started chatting. Oh, I just passed the theory exam online a few days ago. It's my first time here today. At the mention of this, Tong Ki felt a little depressed. Sai, you're also here to train in the simulation chamber. This simulation chamber training is too uncomfortable. Even the beggar version of a flying car did not have such a bad environment. You'll have to endure at least 72 hours of training. We're almost done. Tong Ki complained a little, as if he was trying to escape. Zhu Tuin nodded. There was no need to boast about some things. They chatted for a while longer before saying goodbye. Time was precious. He could not waste it. Besides, they were not familiar with each other. They would end up in an awkward situation if they chatted for a while. They might as well leave earlier. After saying his goodbyes, Zhu Tui quickly walked toward the actual driving training grounds. Just as he was about to turn the corner, Tong Ki suddenly shouted, "Zhu Tui, don't go the wrong way. That is the actual driving training grounds. The simulation training grounds are over here." "Thank you. I'm going to the actual driving training ground." Zhu Tui turned around and waved the key in his hand. The sunlight shone on the sensor key and fell into Tong Ki's eyes. It was especially glaring. Tong Ki was silent for a long time. Darn it, he had just said that he wanted to get out of the sea of bitterness called the simulation pod. Now, it seemed that Zhu Tui had jumped over this difference. Just as Tong Ki was lamenting, Heming Kokshuan, who had been feeling uncomfortable, suddenly spoke. "FCAC, this kid is still the same. He even F-King lied to us when he got a special flying license. He clearly finished the training in the simulation pod. He even lied and said that he had just arrived today. Everyone has to undergo simulation training first. How can they go for actual driving training the moment they arrive? He doesn't even have a brain when he lies." Heming Kokshuan's tone was filled with jealousy. Heming Kokshuan's words stunned Tong Ki. Tong Ki suddenly realized something when he looked at Zhu Tui, who was far away under the sunlight, and then at Heming Kokshuan, who was standing in the shadows. He was wrong. He should not have befriended a person like Heming Kokshuan from the start. Heming Kokshuan was clearly the kind of person who could only bring him negative information according to Tong Ki's father. He had to stay away from such people. Not only would interacting with such a person affect his emotions, but it would also lower his status. Tong Ki suddenly understood what his father had nagged him about many times. However, it was better late than never. Don't you know that there's a special rule for getting a special flying license? If your reaction speed is above 8 milliseconds, you can directly undergo actual driving training. After saying that, Tong Ki walked towards the simulation training ground. His reaction speed is 8 milliseconds. That's impossible. That's absolutely impossible. How long has Zhu Tui been in school? This is definitely not. While Heming Kokshuan retorted, Tong Ki had already walked far away. Tong Ki, wait for me. Wait for me. Heming Kokshuan hurriedly chased after him. However, before he could catch up, Tong Ki entered his simulation pod first. With a bang, he closed the door and started training. Heming Kokshuan was left alone in a daze.